Week 13 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few defense DST units I would start this week. The first one, the Denver Broncos are coming off a bye week and with a slam dunk matchup at the Washington Commanders. I think Denver, they could go out there, create havoc. Jaden Daniels still out, even though he's practicing. He's not going to play this week. And it could be a long day for Marcus Mariota in this offense, even though Terry McLaurin might return to the lineup as well. Week 8 versus Dallas, 24 points allowed, 2 sacks, 2 INTs. Week 9 at Houston, 15 points allowed, 4 sacks. Week 10, Vegas, 7 points allowed, 6 sacks, an interception, a block kick. In Week 11, in the great victory versus Kansas City, 19 points allowed, 3 sacks, an interception, a block kick. So like I said, they're coming off a bye week, coming off a big division win versus Kansas City, one of the best offenses in the league. And this week in a matchup at a bad Washington Commander team, I think Denver goes out there and they're going to get their sacks. They're going to get some fantasy points and turnovers. This week, next DST is the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers have a great matchup versus the Vegas Raiders that give up the third most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. I know the Chargers in a plus matchup in Week 11, they totally didn't show up in that ball game and got the doors blown off. So they'd be the last few weeks. Week 9, Tennessee, 14 points allowed, 4 sacks. Week 10 versus Pittsburgh, 10 points allowed, 3 sacks, 2 interceptions, a fumble recovery, a safety. In Week 11 at Jacksonville, it was an embarrassing performance, 35 points, an interception. So coming off a bye week, getting a little bit healthier and getting embarrassed, like I said, at Jacksonville. I think this defense comes out with a chip on its shoulder. And Geno Smith's been one of the worst quarterbacks in the league, holding on to the football too long, throwing a lot of interceptions. And this week, I think this Charger defense goes out there and has a nice game. The next DST is the Atlanta Falcons. So the Falcons, a 1-week streaming option with a good matchup at the New York Jets. They give up the 6th most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. So Atlanta, they do get to the quarterback. I know they give up points, but they get to the quarterback, like I said. They create turnovers. In the last couple weeks, they've actually gone out there and put up some numbers. Week 10 at the Colts, 31 points allowed, 7 sacks, an interception, a fumble recovery. Week 11 versus the Panthers, 30 points allowed, 5 sacks. Week 12 at New Orleans, 4 points allowed, 5 sacks, an interception, a fumble recovery. So like I said, this Atlanta defense, they get it at the quarterback. And Tyrod Taylor, he's a backup quarterback that's been starting over the last couple weeks. Another guy who's taken a lot of hits throughout his career, holding on to the football long. And also, he's capable of turning over the football a couple times. So with all these factors, and even though it's a road game, and we've seen games where Falcons give up points, they're still going to get their sacks and create a couple turnovers there. Start this week. The next start, the Jacksonville Jaguars. So the Jags, their defense, they've been creating turnovers as well. And this week, a slam dunk matchup for them at the Tennessee Titans. They give up the most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. So the last few weeks, this defense has gone out there and they're making some plays. Week 10 at Houston, 30 points allowed, 2 sacks, an interception, a fumble recovery, and a return touchdown on a punt from Parker Washington. Week 11 versus the Chargers, 6 points allowed, 3 sacks, an interception. In Week 12 at Arizona, 18 points allowed, 6 sacks. So they get to the quarterback as well as this Jacksonville defense. I know they're going to give up some points, obviously, but they, like I said, going to get to the quarterback. They'll create a couple turnovers. And this Tennessee offense doesn't really have anything going with Cam Ward in their quarterback and Calvin Ridley out for the season, where they don't really have big-time playmakers. So with all those factors, I think the Jaguars are a good streaming option. Start this week. In the final DST is the Indianapolis Colts. So Indianapolis back home after a tough loss, blowing that game last week at the Kansas City Chiefs. And they got Houston coming in, where their offense I don't think is all that great, besides Nico Collins and Dalton Schultz at times. Very inconsistent offense and not much going on, where CJ Stroud has had an injury-prone season and also as well a down season once again. Week 9 at Pittsburgh, 27 points allowed, 3 sacks, a fumble recovery. Week 10, 25 points allowed versus the Falcons, 3 sacks, a fumble recovery. In Week 12 at Kansas City, like I said, they played a good game, a majority of that game, but just couldn't close it out was this defense, but held Kansas City to a bunch of field goals, 23 points allowed, 4 sacks, an interception, a fumble recovery. So this week with Houston coming in, like I said, CJ Stroud's having a down year. Throw some interceptions, I believe, in this game. And he's another quarterback taking some big sacks, where this whole line isn't all that great, and their running game hasn't been great for Houston. So with all those factors, I like Indianapolis this week as a start. So that's a few defense DST units I would start for Week 13 of the fantasy football season.